Join with computer audio. Start video. Display eyesight. Na 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 na. Right. Oh. This is exciting. Now, can we hear each other? Have I put that up there? So that's all good. Okay. It looks like everyone's video is actually turned off. Does that sound about right? If you guys want to turn on your video, that would be wonderful so I can get some feedback as to whether you can hear me or not, or see me. Hi. Here we go. We're seeing some faces appear. Happy days. Right. Can you hear me all right? Is that coming through? Nice. Awesome. Welcome along. We're going to share my screen. Share screen. Ta-da. So you don't have to look at my mug the whole time. That would be good, I'm guessing. And we're going to go to participants, which is cool. So we're going to put that there. And we're going to go to this and look at more chat. Where's chat? Here we go, chat. Happy days. Right. How are we this morning, team? Yeah, good. You got a beautiful day to be outside. I'm not sure who you are that's outside, but it looks like a cracking day out there. Looks absolutely gorgeous. We'll just give it a few minutes to let a few other people come on. But yes, it's a glorious day to be stuck inside in my home office. There's a lady there with the video on. Are you inside a shop at the moment? Ah, okay. I've just unmuted you. Whereabouts are you from? Nope. Can't hear you, sorry.
Oh, I'm from Tiroha.
Is that better?
Okay, what we might do is we might just get started and people can come and join the party as we go. How does that sound?
Yeah.
Because after all, it's 3 minutes past and we start on time. That's the theory anyway. Right, can you see my screen? A big screen with it says back in the habit? Yep, cool, awesome. So we shall get started. If you guys, just before we get started, a bit of housekeeping. If you've got any questions as we go through, there's a Zoom group chat. Feel free to ask questions in there. And at the end of the webinar, we'll do a Q&A. So if you've got any questions that you want answered, you've got any things you want to throw around, then please just chuck them in there and we'll go back to them at the end of this and just see if we can help you out with anything that you guys want to talk about. Make sense? Cool. Right, it is recording. Cool, so this is the first of 3 webinars that we're going to do for the owners of cafes, restaurants, and any business really that's in hospitality. The next one will be in a couple of weeks' time, and we're going to be doing a focus on business strategy and how it actually plays out for you and your business. So I've done a lot of work in strategy in the past, and I've got some tools that I just want to show you that you can actually use in your business. So that'll be the next one that we do. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you to Hayley Smith and the Waka team who have put this together and have really helped today get going in these seminars, which is really cool. They're doing an amazing job in a really trying time. They are an incredible bunch of people, and they're doing a really cool job. So thank you very much to those people. We are going to be recording today. So if I talk too fast, and I do, I'm guilty of that, then feel free to grab the recording. I will send you a link to the recording when we figure out where we're going to put it. We don't really know yet, but I've been told that it's going to go up online. So you are very welcome to go back and refer to it in future. Right, so on the agenda today, we're going to talk about how you grow your business, okay? So obviously COVID-19 has thrown the cat among the pigeons, and today we're going to come at it from the angle of your customers, right? So what happened, as you know, is COVID-19 came along and disrupted the business community massively. So obviously in the seminars, next week, 2 weeks time, we're going to be doing strategy. Today we're going to talk about getting your customers back in the habit, thus the title of the webinar. So we look at habits and how they grow businesses. We're going to look at habits versus loyalty, because people use these words interchangeably, but they're actually quite significantly different. And we're going to talk about how loyalty is going to make your business bulletproof. And I've got the most amazing example from a customer of mine who is right in the thick of the action when it comes to COVID-19. So that's what we're going to cover off today. Just before I go too much into it, I'll just quickly give you a rundown of what I do. So I have been business coaching and mentoring for coming up 17 years now. I've worked with businesses through the GFC and, more importantly, the Christchurch earthquakes. And if you look at the impact on the Christchurch earthquakes to the impact of COVID-19, there's a lot of similarities between back then and what happened there and COVID-19. So there's a lot of similarities, and a lot of the strategies that we're using for my clients for this are very, very similar to what we used for Christchurch after the earthquakes. Give you an example. One of my clients down there, one day was running, or in the morning, in fact, the business was running. In the afternoon, the roof had caved in. They couldn't get near their business. They were out for 6 weeks before they could do anything. And that's not dissimilar to what we've had so far with COVID-19. So there's a lot of similar strategies that we can actually employ as we've learned from COVID-19, from the Christchurch earthquakes. So I've done a lot of work with businesses all over the world. I've written a book on psychometric profiling, and one of the reasons we're talking about some sort of brain stuff is because it's been an interest of mine. And I wrote a book on psychometric profiling, which I have sold around the world, and I use it as part of the program there on the right-hand side called Recruit Right, which is a recruiting program for business owners. I sell that online and all over the world. And I've also created a strategic planning playbook, which is going to be published later on this year, which is basically the strategic planning process, but in a book that people can actually download or print out and use for their own businesses. So I've taken the same process that is used by businesses all over the world, and the ones that I've used with businesses all over the world, and put it into a book so you can actually take it and do it at your own pace. So that's what I do for a job. I also got a business called thecafedoctor.com. This is where we help hospitality business owners to get more time, freedom, and profits in their business. So that's obviously pretty self-explanatory. I just work with with cafe business owners all over New Zealand, Australia, and we're going into the United States at the moment as well. So it's quite an interesting time for that. Also, if you're a cafe owner, Cafe Owners NZ is the Facebook group. It's New Zealand's largest hospitality group of really, really cool people. There's a general forum and discussion group, but what's really interesting for most business owners is that there's a private, and it's an owners only group. That's a forum just for owners, and everyone's got to be vetted before they go in. So it's a really safe place for business owners. So that's available too. And there's a free buy and sell. So if you don't want to put your stuff on Trade Me, which is understandable, you can go and do that at Cafe Owners NZ. So let's get into it. Do you remember a couple of months ago when everything was just trucking along quite nicely and we were all having it was a nice summer and everything was going just swimmingly? And then COVID-19 hit and the world changed on a dime. Probably the biggest thing that's happened to New Zealand and the world, certainly this century, and probably for a long time since. It's had a really interesting impact on businesses. It's been good for some and bad for others. But what it's done from a customer's point of view is that because of lockdown, it's taken us out of our normal routines and our habits, and it's actually broken a lot of habits, some good, some bad. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and what the effect is of COVID-19, and how, as business owners, what does it actually mean to us, and how can we use an understanding of that to regrow our businesses and get back to profitability. So it got us out of the habit, and our job is to get our businesses back in the habit and our customers back in the habit of coming to talk to us. So that's really what we're going to talk about. So before we get too far into it, we'll just talk about what a habit actually is. A habit in a nutshell is a recurring pattern of behavior. Now this might seem quite straightforward, but it's really critical to understand the difference between habit and loyalty. They're close, but they're not the same. So a habit is a recurring pattern of behavior. It's what we do every single day. Makes sense? Quite straightforward. What it actually does though, a habit that we have allows our brain to switch off. And that's really important to understand. Our brains need to switch off, and habits give us the ability to sit there and go, click, I don't have to think about this. It's just what I do. So that's what a habit actually is, which leads us to truth number one. And this is quite an interesting thing to actually figure out, which is habits come about because fundamentally we're quite lazy. What habits do is they allow us to turn our brains off and just do what it is that we actually want to do. For example, it's morning tea time. My stomach is rumbling. I want a coffee, or I want a muffin, or whatever it is. I go down to my local cafe, I buy something, and then I go back to work, and my reward is a beautiful coffee or a muffin or whatever that actually is. So they allow us to turn off our brains. And our brains, as it turns out, these scientists, when I was at university studying this sort of stuff, there's a whole bunch of research done on our brains and the fact that we really like turning our brains off. And this just gives us the ability to actually turn it off. So what's our goal? Our goal is to get our customers, and this sounds terrible, but it's true, to turn their brains off and just to come and see us as a matter of course. They just come and see us because they are in the habit of doing this. So when you're building a business and people get out of the habit of coming to see you, we've got to get them back in the habit of coming to see us. And understanding this is an amazingly powerful tool for business owners. And it really will be a litmus test for whatever you do as for these first couple of weeks to start back up again in order to get your customers back in the habit of coming to see you. So what we do is we go for habits first, and then we're going to talk about loyalty, because loyalty is the second part of this. Most people think that loyalty is the first part, but it's actually the second part. So how do we get a habit? Well, there's actually 3 steps that the scientists have discovered to getting us a habit. Firstly, there's a cue. So there's something that says to us, right, we need to do something. And the best example of this is, again, it's morning tea time. I need a coffee. What do I actually do? So there's a cue. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I need a coffee. Our routine, walk down to the coffee shop, get a nice latte. Our reward for that, and that's the crucial part. The crucial part is the reward. So this is like, if you will, the confirmation of my idea of going down and doing that is a beautiful cup of coffee and that sort of thing. So once I'm in the habit, I don't even need to think about anything to do with that. It's just what I do. My footprints in the footpath are the same every single day. So there's a cue, a routine, and a reward loop that goes around and around and around again and again and again. Make sense? Yes, thumbs up. By the way, you guys are welcome to turn on your cameras so I can get some feedback. I love feedback, by the way, so please feel free to turn on your cameras and wave and scream and all that sort of thing. So 3 simple habits to form a habit: cue, routine, reward. Once we do that for a given period of time, things become habit, and our brain switches off. As business owners, what we want is people to get in the habit of doing the same thing time and time and time and time and time again. Make sense? Cool. So it's actually quite straightforward to form a habit. And there's a couple of rules when it comes to habit. So there's a whole bunch of research done on how do you actually form habits and how do you break habits. Interestingly, a lot of this research was done by cigarette companies. And we know obviously about cigarettes and how dangerous they are. There was a whole bunch of research that was done on how people form habits. Interestingly, so nicotine is the addictive ingredient when it comes to cigarettes, right? We all kind of know that and understand that. But interestingly, they did some tests. Now, this is back in the 70s, and these were paid for by cigarette companies. And they found out that you only need to have a smoker have nicotine in their system for 21 days. And then, because what they did is they did a test to see how long it took for people to become addicted by doing the same thing. And it takes 21 days to get into the rhythm of a habit of being a smoker. After that, it didn't matter, unless it came to giving up cigarettes, it didn't matter if there was nicotine in the cigarette or not, because by that stage you were in a habit, and habits are far and away the hardest thing to do, the hardest thing for people to give up when it comes to giving up smoking. So nicotine is really powerful to get you addicted and to keep you addicted. But interestingly, nicotine is out of your system in 3 days. After that, it's the habit that people find hardest to break. So what did they find out and what's been confirmed since, and other studies since that? Well, if you do something for 21 days in a row, so consistently for 3 weeks, then you will have a habit. A good habit, a bad habit, a running habit, a smoking habit, a coffee habit, whatever it is, 21 days. You do it for 90 days in a row, it will become part of your daily routine and will be practically impossible to break. So that's the 21-90 rule. Our job as business owners is to get people to come down on a regular basis, time and time again, Monday through Friday, every single week. They get their coffee, they get their lunch, they get whatever it is from us. We do that for long enough and regularly enough, and that's our business. It's really important that we understand that. All that research, by the way, was done by a guy called Maxwell Maltz, who was a guy who studied a whole bunch of stuff in the 70s, and it was a really interesting chap. He did a whole bunch of other consumer behavior research. So that's the 21-90 rule. So how do we actually apply that to our businesses? Well, there's one obvious one, and there's a whole science and industry behind getting people into the habit, and we call that loyalty. We incorrectly call it loyalty, as it turns out. But there are 5 things that we can do, bar loyalty systems, and we're going to talk about loyalty systems, so just bear with me for a second, that we can do to actually really encourage people to form a habit. And they are as simple as this. Firstly, whatever we offer needs to be consistent and dependably consistent. So, for example, if I come to your coffee shop and I have a different coffee every single day, it will be harder for me to form a habit because it's not the same thing being reinforced every single day. So it's got to be absolutely consistent and dependably consistent. People go on about McDonald's, right? So they sit there and go, McDonald's, it's rubbish food, it's this and that. But the one thing that they have is that all the way across the world, they are absolutely consistent. The Big Mac that we buy is the same in New Zealand as what it is in every other country in the world. So you know that as a traveler, there's 2 things you can count on at McDonald's. Firstly, a Big Mac will taste the same, and their bathrooms are immaculate. And we laugh, I've done a lot of traveling, believe me, that's really important. So firstly, we've got to be consistency, we've got to have a consistency in our product, and we've got to be dependable as far as that goes. The second thing that we need to be is to get people to form habits, is we've got to be really convenient. We've got to be easy for people to deal with us. So, for example, car parking. If car parking is an issue, then it's going to be difficult for people to get to us, and it's going to be hard for them to form a habit. So it's going to be easy for them to buy from us. There's got to be a value perception or alignment with what I'm after. So people say, I like going to this place because it suits me, and it's I think I should pay $5 for a coffee. It charges me $5 for a coffee. So there's a value alignment there with what I think things should cost as far as my own personal situation goes. So there has to be a value perception and alignment with the product. There has to be a sameness and familiarity to it. So we get attached to things that that are consistently the same. So it has to be familiar and it has to be unchallenging. Because challenging makes us actually sit there and go, oh, hang on, do I actually like this or do I not like this? So sameness is great. I'll give you an example of that in a second. And it has to be simple and easily repeatable process. In other words, I need to be able to do it kind of the same way time and time again. So it has to be easily repeatable and simple. So give you an example of sameness and familiarity. So this morning, so this is a Wednesday morning. Before my first appointment on a Wednesday, I go down to Scott's on Victoria Street and I have the healthy breakfast and a cup of coffee. I do that every single Wednesday before my appointment. I do an hour's worth of prep before an appointment. I go down there. You will see me in there every Wednesday because I know exactly what I'm going to get. I know how the coffee tastes. I know what my breakfast is going to look like. I can switch my brain off. In fact, they don't even ask me what I want anymore, which is fantastic. So if we can do those things on a consistent basis, then we will encourage our customers to have a habit. And that's what a habit actually looks like. So you're probably sitting there going, well, hang on a second. I've been told that habits come through loyalty programs. And loyalty programs are the oldest way that we've had to actually get people to be in a habit. And they do have a place in business, but they're not actually what we think they are. So people call them loyalty systems. They're not loyalty systems, they're habit systems. And it shouldn't be called a loyalty card because it's a habit card. A loyalty is a completely different thing. We're going to talk about that. So do they actually work? Yes, they do. In a nutshell, yes, they work. Otherwise, we wouldn't do them. So loyalty systems generally work. But there's a couple of provisos with that statement. Firstly, the problem with loyalty systems is that they normally cost us margin. So normally if we give away a coffee, then that's margin we could have had, okay? So the first problem that I have with them is that they cost you big time. Secondly, they only work for a short period of time while you're developing a habit. And for a small percentage of the population, they'll work for a longer time. But most of us just get into the habit. They're actually really inconvenient these days, although they are getting better. If you've got one of these smartphones, then you can get programs like Store Card and all that sort of thing, which have, you can scan your card and have them in there. So they only work for a short period of time and they're on, not on an ongoing basis if you want to develop habits, because habits form quickly, well, 21 days. And after that, you're searching for loyalty, which is a different thing. The technologies are pretty good. The problem is that every single person who's in business in a coffee shop has had one of those loyalty systems. So it doesn't make us any different to anyone else. So there is actually a better way. And we've experimented with this with a whole bunch of different businesses over the years. And there's some really cool research done and some anecdotal evidence from my clients about what actually works. So my suggestion to a cafe owner who's actually looking towards what should my loyalty system look like, don't give away a free coffee because people are going to buy a coffee anyway. Do one that's the same principles, but do it for something that they weren't going to buy. So for example, if I come down and I go and buy a coffee every single day, you know you're going to get that sale because that's my habit. I come and get a coffee from you every day. So what am I not in the habit of getting? So that might be a muffin. So I would give out a loyalty card for a muffin because you'll get the sale for the coffee anyway. You probably weren't going to be getting the sale for the muffin. So try not doing it for coffees, try doing it for muffins and that sort of thing. And if you look at food costs for a muffin makes it more of a viable option, put it like that. So that's my thoughts on that. Yes, they have worked in the past. Now there's all kinds of loyalty systems. Most of them are executed really poorly, has been my experience. So if you're going to do a loyalty system, make it super simple for me to be part of and make it really straightforward for me to understand. So that's habit forming. And obviously loyalty systems, what we call loyalty systems, are part of a habit. But let's take one step beyond a habit. And let's look at loyalty, which is a different thing altogether. So loyalty in itself is a one step beyond habit forming. So this actually comes along with a strong feeling of support and allegiance. And I got this great example towards the end of this webinar about how this actually comes to life. So it's a strong feeling of support or allegiance. So this is something that I personally connect to. It's not just something I'm in the habit of doing. Habits are different. Loyalty is a connection with you, your brand, your people, whatever it actually is. So that's loyalty. And as you can see, it's a slight bit different to habit. So what are the differences? Well, in a nutshell, habits are relatively rational. Why? Because it's easy for me to go and do something. So I go and do something and it becomes a habit over time. It's routine orientated, it's rational, it's relatively unconscious because it's something that we do without really thinking about. It's just a habit. It's also repeated behavior, and it's about the behavior. It's encouraged by ease of purchase and convenience, and it's relatively elastic. And the example I give about elasticity is this. So up in Auckland, I was consulting to a business and we started doing some interviews with some customers to find out why they actually come here. And one lady was talking to one morning. She said, I come here because you're exactly a 6.5 minute walk from my office. So she worked literally 6.5 minutes up the road. And I said, what would make you stop coming to the shop and go somewhere else? And she said, oh, if there was a shop that was closer. And sure enough, a coffee shop opened with not too bad coffee that was a couple of minutes walk away. So what did she do? She stopped coming to this particular coffee shop and went to the one that was closer, because habits can be reformed. She still got the reward, which was the coffee, all that sort of thing. She still had the same routine. Only when it came to summer, she didn't get burnt, and winter, she didn't get wet, or not as much anyway. So it's relatively elastic as far as it's changeable, it's pliable. Incentives work and can work quite well to form habits, and it's around value. So we call people who are in the habit, if you will, they're satisfied. So they get something every day, they're in the habit of it, it's cool, I get a coffee, I'm happy, I'm rewarded, all that sort of stuff. But let's take that one step further and go to loyalty. So loyalty can be somewhat irrational, and we see that in sports teams, right? So people support all kinds of sports teams. There's often no real reason why. And yeah, they can be quite irrational. My brother, for example, for the longest time would only buy one type of sneakers. So he would only buy Adidas sneakers. And for some reason, he had a loyalty to that brand. He wasn't giving anything free, he wasn't anything, but he was just an Adidas guy, and that was his thing. It's completely irrational why he'd be Adidas and not something else. They weren't necessarily cheaper or anything like that. It was just, that was his thing. So it can be somewhat irrational. It's also unconscious and it's conscious. People are aware of their loyalties. Like, I will only support this business or that sports team or that brand or whatever. So people are conscious of that. There has to be an alignment with their own self-image. For example, anyone who's ever done sports will know that every brand that portrays itself as a sports brand has elite athletes. And we all, most of us mistakenly, has to be said, think of ourselves as an elite athlete. So on some level. So we buy the flash of sneakers and we buy all these sort of things because we'd like to think of ourselves as our 16-year-old selves, and that's aligned with our own self-image. People are loyal to, another example would be car brands. So there's a certain self-image that we have of ourselves, and a lot of people will buy car brands, not because they're better, but because they align with their own self-image. I've got a mate of mine who's an outdoorsy guy, and he does kayaking and mountain biking, all that sort of thing. And he would only buy a Subaru because for him, his self-image says it's practical, it's four-wheel drivey, it's outdoory, but it's still kind of practical for the, the wife and the kids and that sort of stuff. So there has to be a big alignment with self-image and with the values of that brand. So the values, we're going to talk about values a little bit. So they have to align with those things. It has to be more than convenient for people to actually get loyal to something. And another example I'll use of this is that if you ever go for a drive down K Drive, Kaikatea Drive, on a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, it might be open on a Wednesday, I'm not sure. But look at the line of people outside Mama's Donuts. right? You know Mama's Donuts? I love Mama's Donuts. My guilty pleasure. So that's not a particularly convenient business to go and do business with. You've got to park. There's not a great deal of parking, but for some reason, there is a queue outside that business. It has got a massive loyal following. It's not habit. It's not convenient. It's not easy, but people love it. Loyalty, when it comes to loyalty and developing loyalty, also you'll notice that their behavior is relatively inelastic. For example, my brother would never be seen dead in a pair of shoes sports shoes that weren't Adidas sports shoes for some reason. So it's relatively inelastic. People don't change their loyalties easily. Imagine this for a second. Imagine that you're an All Black fan and you went and lived in Australia for whatever reason. I don't know why you would, but let's just say you did. What's the likelihood of you changing your allegiances from the All Blacks to the Wallabies? Probably zilch, right? So our behavior and our loyalties are relatively inelastic. And as far as driving loyalty, as far as the behavior goes, incentives really less effective. They don't really care because people are customers of yours and they love it or they're not. So we call people who are very loyal, we call them the committed, versus the habitual people who we call the satisfied. Does that make sense? Yeah? Do we see some nodding heads? Please feel free to turn on your camera so I can see your nodding heads, or you're sitting there going, huh? So I don't mind. So that's habit. The interesting thing about loyalty, we all strive for loyal customers. That's the best customer in the world, loyal customer, people who rave about us and that sort of stuff. The thing about loyal customers is you're absolutely right. That's what we want, because there's a couple of things they'll do for you. Firstly, they'll be more forgiving of your mistakes and your frailties, so the things that you're not so good at, because they love you deeply and all the other things that you do. They will defend you and they will actively promote and refer you. This doesn't sound like a dream customer. So they'll do all those sort of things. They don't mind, interestingly, if you're loyal to something, you don't mind paying a premium for that product. My brother, for example, paid way more than he should for his Adidas sneakers. We buy All Black jerseys for far more than we should because we are loyal to our All Blacks. And interestingly, if somebody is loyal to a company, they're not even interested in pitches from other companies. So they're not even interested in going to other places down the road. Give you a really good example of this. So before I show you the brand, because you'll know the brand instantaneously, what is the only thing that will allow an accountant to wear leather and still be taken seriously? You've been asked that question before, haven't you? It's a Harley Davidson. And there was a whole bunch of research done on Harley Davidsons. As a motorcycle goes, now I'm no motorcycle guy, so I've had to refer on my friends who do own these motorcycles. They are relatively low quality. They used to have a terrible reputation for breaking down and being expensive to repair. They don't ride particularly well, apparently, and they are very, very expensive. You can spend like $60,000 on a Harley Davidson if you want to. But for some reason, they have incredible brand loyalty. There are an amazing amount of people who will not stop raving about Harley Davidson and what it means to them and all that sort of stuff. So you've got people who love this brand, which is nowhere near as good as some of the Japanese brands, but people love it. Interestingly, there's this tool that we use to look at customer loyalty and get customer feedback. It's called Net Promoter Score, or NPS. And I really suggest that you look into this as a tool and use it in your business when you can. Net Promoter Score looks at how likely you are to be a loyal customer. And it does it on a scale of -100 to 0 to +100. So it asks 3 questions. Firstly, how likely are you to refer this brand to a friend or family member when they want a motorcycle in this case? What's the primary reason for this score, and what could they do to improve it? So the scale, the numerical part, goes from -100 to +100. Now, as it happens, banks, there's not one bank in the world which apparently has ever got above 0. Most of us don't like our banks. I think the same can be said for our phone companies at the moment, but that's another story. But our banks all score poorly. One of the highest scores ever recorded, and it is still the case, is Harley Davidson. They have a plus 83 NPS score, which is completely unheard of. Like if you got a plus 83 with customers in your business, you would not struggle ever again to make hay. It's an incredible score. And it's not actually rational when you look at the actual product itself. So Harley Davidsons are a great example of a whole bunch of customers who buy into the brand, love what they stand for, will forgive their mistakes, and really are a great example of people who are actually loyal. So we want to get customers like that in our business, who will defend us to the hilt, who don't mind paying a bit extra, who will travel as long as they possibly can to actually be customers of ours. So how do we actually do that? So there are a bunch of drivers of loyalty. These are the ones that really stick out. So there needs to be a values alignment between what it is that you do and yourself. So there has to be an alignment of the values of the business and the values of the customer. So the easiest way to do that is preach loud and proud about your values. So there needs to be a values alignment. There needs to be a quality of offering and a sense of self. So the offer itself has to align with my own personal perception of myself in the world. So for example, I drive a BMW, I'm a BMW driver. That's how I fit in the world. So therefore I go and buy a BMW or a Harley or whatever. There can be, and there really should be, a personal connection. So it's often, and I've done a lot of work with all kinds of businesses, not just hospitality, but one of the best experiences I had was with Coombs Johnson BMW, the BMW dealership here in town. And they spend a lot of time on making sure that people will address you by your first name, if that's what they think is appropriate, or by a Mr. Fitzsimmons or whatever. So they spend a lot of time making sure there's a personal connection. And the last thing is you need people to feel really special. So you can do that in a whole bunch of different ways. The best way that I've seen is for the senior member of staff, either the owner or the front of house manager or whatever, making a point every day of talking to the regulars by name. So learn the names, talk to people, be that person, that contact point. So have that personal connection. And then every once in a while, rather than a loyalty card, so we talk about loyalty cards, rather than having a loyalty card, what you can do is say, hey, listen, today the coffee's on the house, really appreciate you being a customer. You do the same thing as a loyalty card, but it's done on a randomized basis and people feel special. Because if I feel special, then I'll sit there and go, wow, they really quite like me and they've got values which I align with and they've got the right quality product and that sort of thing. And I feel a real personal connection with the people around me and they make me feel really special. Well, those are great drivers of loyalty. So have a think about how you can actually do that. One of the ways that you can do that, and I don't see this done often enough, is when you do customer surveys, right? So a lot of us do customer surveys. What happens in just about every single case is that a customer will give you some feedback and they never hear back about what happened to that feedback. So they'll ask you, were you satisfied? And is there anything we can do better and all that sort of stuff. And then it just goes into this oblivion of this black hole of information and no one ever hears back. If you want to drive loyalty, go back to that person and say, hey, listen, really appreciate your feedback on whatever it is that you told us about. This is what we're doing about it. Most people don't get that last bit. And so I'm asking you as a business owner for feedback. You give me feedback, but you never know what actually happens to it. I don't feel special because I don't feel listened to because you haven't given me feedback on what I've told you. You want to drive loyalty, make people feel special. One of the ways you can do that is obviously by, if you're going to ask a question, then go back to them with the answer and tell them what you did. The best example I've seen of this is it's a hotel group in the States, and I forget them. It's Ritz-Carlton, that's right, the Ritz-Carlton. So in every single room, they have a customer survey and they really appreciate it and they will ask you a number of times while you stay there for feedback on their customer surveys. So they put it in there and they say, would you like some feedback? And they go, yep, cool. And then they will send an email back to you or a letter to say, thank you very much for your feedback. This is what we've done with it. So if you had somebody who treated you really specially, and you want to put just call them out and say, hey, listen, so and so was great, then the company will come back to you and say, hey, thanks for your feedback. We went back to Bob and we told him what your feedback was, and we gave him a pat on the back and bought him a beer or something like that. And you'll go, wow, how cool is that? So there's little things like that that can really help and can really drive loyalty in your business. Make sense? Cool. So what does all this habit and loyalty stuff actually mean to us? Okay, in a nutshell, we need to be super easy to purchase from. Parking, transaction itself, the queues, all that sort of stuff. Prime example, who here, show of hands, has been to coffee culture at 5 Crossroads? No? Okay, a couple of you, that's cool. So coffee culture 5 Crossroads, the coffee's fine, the food's fine, the parking is an absolute nightmare. It's almost impossible to ever get into a habit because you know what? I'm never sure if I'm going to get a park. If I'm driving past, I need a coffee and I see a park, then yes, perhaps I'll stay there. But the parking is an absolute nightmare. The transaction is great, the queues, they're normally pretty small, but the parking in this particular case makes it difficult to actually purchase from them. Our values need to align. That's quite straightforward. Our customers need to feel valued and special. Occasional incentives work well with loyal customers. One of the tools that you can use, by the way, so you've got loyal customers, people who come and see you every day and love you and all that sort of stuff. If you want to drive more of that, one of the things we do in one of the places that I work with, I can't tell you who it is because they've asked for anonymity, but you could possibly run the same sort of thing in your place. Would be before they put out new dishes, they go and talk to some of their regulars and they go, hey, listen, lunch is on us today. We'd like you to try this particular meal. We're thinking about putting it out. We'd love your opinion. Imagine how special you'd feel if the chef made a special dish just for you to get your opinion on something. How special would you feel? Amazing. So make people feel special, do those sort of things. And lastly, our customer experience must reflect the drivers of loyalty and habit. So think about your customer for a second, right? So they go through this process where they leave whatever it is they're doing, they come to your business and they go around and maybe they'll wait in a queue and then they order and they might go past a cabinet, all that sort of thing. All those things refer to the customer experience. So if you ever get the chance to, and I thoroughly recommend you do this on a regular basis, is go and be a customer at your own business and go and say, well, what does it actually mean to be a customer in my business? And how can we actually drive habit and loyalty through that experience? Make sense? I hope so. So in a nutshell, habit, make it easy, make it convenient, offer value, make it familiar, and it'll become an unconscious thing. Loyalty, make it engaging, make it really personal, focus on your values. It's a very human thing to be loyal, very human, and it's not particularly rational. So don't expect people to be behaving rationally. So that's that in a nutshell. How do you drive loyalty? In a nutshell, focus on habit first, get people to come down to you every single day. Champion your values, and I've got a great example how that literally has saved the Waikato business. In a minute, this will blow you away. Form deep relationships with your customers and do your customer experience by design and not default. And most businesses do it by default. And I hate that. So design your customer experience. Design every single thing. Wherever they are in the line, have a look at what they're looking at. Do those signs make sense? Is it easy for me? Can I see the way forward to ordering? And is there a big menu full of coffees and food and all that sort of thing? Is it easy for me to do a transaction? So make sure that your customer experience is really, really simple and it's designed. It doesn't just happen by default. One of the ways that I take my clients through, by the way, to get feedback on this is called the voice of the customer. So the VOC, I call it, the voice of the customer. There's a whole bunch of tools and techniques that you can use to get feedback on this and to drive loyalty. I would look under Net Promoter Score is a pretty good place to start. But certainly you can start talking to your customers. You can do all kinds of surveys, that sort of stuff, to try and get some feedback on what your customer experience is actually like. So I promised you an example of a really tragic situation that has been nowhere near as detrimental for this business as what it could have been. So about 10 years ago, I started working with a business, and the business owners were really forward thinking, and we talked about values, and they had some values, they just never really gave them names. And they love their staff, they love their rural town, and they decided that they were going to take this business to an entirely new level. They came up with some company values, and you'll see how these play out in a second. I'll tell you what the values are before I tell you too much more about the business. So the first value they had was, and this is for their staff, is game face. So game face to them meant when we're in front of the customer, we are smiley, happy people. We are about them having a moment, which is the second value, which is give everyone a moment. So when we're on show, which is our game face, we give everybody a moment. Now, giving everybody a moment is about making people feel special. See how these sort of things will drive loyalty? You can see all these boxes being ticked. The third one is tell it how it is. So this is about being upfront, straight to the point, honest, caring people who are, the sort of people that you'd want to go to the pub with. Ironic. Better yourself was their fourth value, which is all about getting better at what it is that you want to do in your world. And the last one was know your community. And they spent so much time on instilling the values of those particular 5 values into their business. They came up with an overriding technique or tool that they knew would be a great way of imprinting those values into their business and onto their customers. So when you go into this particular place, by the second time you go up to the bar to order another beer, the person serving you should know your first name and your beer. And so all they have to say is, hey, Matt, would you like another whatever beer? So Matt, would you like another Heineken or whatever? Now, it takes a lot of effort to do this, because as you can appreciate, there's hundreds of customers every week. This wasn't an easy thing to do, but we made it into a bit of a game, and we trained the staff on how to remember names and all that sort of stuff. So we did a whole bunch of stuff to make this actually doable. And so they got customers who weren't just in the habit of going to their place every week, every day, but they were so loyal that when push came to shove, and just recently it has, they got more loyalty than they've ever seen. So this particular business is the Readout Pub in Matamata. So the Readout Bar and Eatery. So you may have heard that the biggest cluster in the Waikato was 77 people, including 1 death, originated at a party that happened, I think, for St. Patrick's Day at the Readout. It's called the Readout Cluster. And it's an absolute tragedy. But they have such loyal customers that they've built up over the years that this hasn't been as detrimental for them as what it has for many other businesses. In fact, if you want to see what it's been like, jump on their Facebook page and look at the comments. The level of support that they've got from their community is absolutely mind-blowing. They have got loyal customers like you have never seen. You would think that a COVID-19 cluster would have meant death for a business, especially a bar. But no, it doesn't actually mean that. Not for these guys. So they have actually done incredibly well. They're doing take-home meals. They did some take-home meals last week, and they were selling out every single night of take-home meals. So what they've done is they've developed a business with incredibly loyal customers who were very forgiving of something that really wasn't their fault, but it had their name attached to it, and were really super supportive when they needed it to be. An incredible story. That Jake and the team there, such cool people, really, really cool people, and a great story about how loyalty can really drive your business forward and create those people who, doesn't matter what you do, will stick by you through thick and thin. So there you go. That's the Readout in Matamata. And that is a little bit on habits and loyalty. Do you guys have any questions? What we'll do now is we'll open up to some questions if you want some questions. If you want to talk outside of this, by the way, you're very welcome to flick me an email at matt@thecafedoctor.com, or just jump on thecafedoctor.com. It's on Facebook. And obviously the Cafe Owners NZ Facebook pages are there as well. You can also find me on LinkedIn. So if you've got any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. We'll open up for a bit of a Q&A. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Like I said at the start of this, the next seminar we're going to do is on strategic planning, which will come from this particular book right here. So we're going to do a whole big bunch of stuff on strategy and strategic planning and how you'll actually plan to get past COVID-19 in your business. So you're very free to ask any questions. No one's going to ask questions. No, okay. I must have asked everyone's questions on the way through. I doubt that, but what the hell? I'll go with it. Just a quick question. Right, fire away, Cam. What have you got? Waikato, very good. Maricopa Beach, beautiful place. Beautiful place. Just a quick question. We're in Waikato. 100% reliant on tourists. Yeah. That's a tough situation. I was talking to some places in Rotorua. There was a 5-star hotel just opened in Rotorua 3 weeks before COVID-19 hit. Cool. So, Sue, what's the most effective way of getting feedback from customers? So, Kim, I'll come back to your question. I'll just address Sue's question to start with. So, there's a whole big bunch of different things you can do. You can do focus groups, you can do customer panels, all that sort of stuff. I just think going and talking to people on a regular basis, say, hey, how was lunch, that sort of stuff, get feedback. Listen, if you want to do something more structured, Net Promoter Score, we've talked about that in the past. We can do Net Promoter Score is a really powerful tool. If you want some details on it, flick me an email at matt@thecafedoctor.com and I can flick you some emails about how to actually run it. It's a pretty cool technique and it's benchmarkable. That's what the part that I like about it. So if you're going to draw, you want to draw sort of findings from it and find out where you are, you'll be able to compare yourself against other brands and that sort of thing. So certainly the feedback from Net Promoter Score is really powerful. And the beauty of it is from a customer's perspective, it only takes a few seconds for it to actually be answered. So yeah, so going back to you, Kim, we're in Waitomo, 100% reliant on tourists. What do you suggest for our cafe to get through? Tough situation, man. Whew, crikey. Couple of things. So in Rotorua at the moment, all the local hotel motel operators are figuring out how to pivot their business because Rotorua, 70% reliant on international tourists. What's going to happen to them? Matamata, same thing. Hobbiton closed, 250 jobs. Interestingly, no tourist buses. It's not going to be, so it's not a world apart from what you're doing. So I deal with a business called Punit. And Punit, you guys know Punit out in Tamahiri? Fantastic spot. Love them to bits. What they have become is a destination. So somehow, Kim, you need to become a destination. Now you could become a destination for food, so do some really unique food offerings and that sort of thing. I'm not sure what the capability of the chef or staff actually is, but become a destination. You've also got Maricopa, so you guys are on the way to Maricopa Beach. So you could say, you could do a bit of a campaign with other businesses, perhaps, and become a day trip from Hamilton and market yourselves to Hamilton. Come have a really unique lunch at my place in Waitomo, and then head out to Maricopa, or there's beautiful walks out that way. So I would look at putting yourself alongside a few other businesses and a few other activities to give people an idea for what they could do for a day trip or something like that. So yeah, that's probably the best thing. Obviously, you need to scale your business to be relevant. So if you've got, if you did have 20 staff, well, you might not be needing 20 staff going forward. So obviously, the scale and that sort of thing, you'll have to run your cash flow forecast to see what the size of the business actually needs. The other thing that I suppose you could think about is whilst there's not a lot of people who live out in Waitomo, there'll be a whole bunch of people passing by, so you could do take-home meals. So maybe not takeaways, but take-home meals. You've got a kitchen that you pay rent on 24/7. So if you can be making food 24/7, that's a great way of picking up the costs and that sort of thing. So you might want to have a look at a few other businesses that are doing take-home meals for locals and that sort of thing. What you need is a shrink wrapper and a kitchen, really. So there's some options there for people who are maybe your locals to get take-home meals and that sort of thing. Cool. Any other questions? Feel free to chuck in a question down the bottom there and in our Zoom chat, and we can take a look and see if we can solve any of your problems. My pleasure. My pleasure, Kim. All right. That looks like that could be us, team. If you've got any questions, again, the place to find me, I'm on Cafe Owners NZ. So I run the group, but really I don't make any comments in there. You can come in there, go to the forum, talk to a whole bunch of other business owners, put your problems down, see if they've got any ideas you want to come up with. You can jump on the cafedoctor.com Facebook page or the website. The website, I'm not actually sure it's on the website today, but either way you can go there. Otherwise, jump on Cafe Owners NZ and see what they say about your predicaments and your problems. And it's been a great group to be part of over this COVID-19. So I thoroughly recommend, if you haven't had a chance to join up, then give it a try, see what you think. If that's that, then we will end there. Thank you so much for joining in. Appreciate your questions. So Kim, have a lovely rest of your day. This again will be recorded, and if you want to, you can replay it another time and go back and see what you think. All right, have a lovely rest of your day. I will talk to you again in a couple of weeks when we talk about business strategy and that sort of thing. All right, see you guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you.